Okay, the Keeling curve is a graph of the accumulation of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere based on continuous measurements taken at the Mauna Loa Observatory on the island of Hawaii from 1958 to present day. Okay, so this is the Keeling curve. You can see how it goes up at around May and it starts to decline around mid-May, and it drops almost as low as it's going to go around the first week of October. And then it does the same thing. You see that each year there's just slightly more CO2 in the air. Okay, this is a graph over, they're suggesting 800,000 years with regards to ice core data before 1958. You see every 100,000 years there's a shift where it drops back down and it goes back up almost every 100,000 years. But across the scale, the CO2 seems to increase just a little bit more, and then just a little bit more, and it's just a little bit more. So the low point there, about at 800,000 years back, it looks like it says 250, and the high point's around maybe 300 on the last couple dips. And then our current high point right now is over 400 parts per million. Now, I really don't know how they can really get ice cores back 100,000 years, so I'm not going to put too much feed into this. Okay, so if we're going to be realistic, it's been the 1920s that was the point of no return. That was 300 parts per million in the 1920s. So I think this whole other thing about 12 years is a myth. We had to change our behaviors around 1910, 1915, and I'm going to guess just because of the increase in population, we were generating enough CO2 out of just rudimentary tasks of maybe heating the homes with coal or something like that. But nonetheless, me and you, we're the heating part. The CO2 is the insulating part. I just like to reiterate that. So often they interpret that differently, but nonetheless, nothing's going to bring the CO2 level down. So I guess all I can say is brace for impact. It makes sense why the financial markets will continue on in this direction, because they're going to keep going until something major happens. It would also make sense to think that they're going to put a Walmart storage facility underneath the ground in front of our enemies, because we don't really have enemies. It's just our enemy is the weather. Okay, so the only thing that's going to re-trap all that CO2 is the reforestation of the earth. And the only way that reforestation of the earth is going to occur is if the populace starts to centralize itself or decrease in a way that would allow reforestation to occur. I don't think ice could actually absorb this much CO2 to bring us back below 200 parts per million. And if we look at a populace from 1928 till now, I think things start to look a little bit more obvious with regards to the Georgia Guidestones. All right, so let's look to see what happens in May when it's supposed to peak, and then after September when it's supposed to be at its lowest. Thanks for joining me on the curve.